Alright, let's do this. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the stream. My name is Louis Baton, and I'm here for you. Boy meets many, thank you very much for stopping by. I didn't realize you were an actual streamer. I was like a minute ago going through various Discord servers, shilling myself, in their channels, and I saw that you had, like, one of the servers that I popped the link into, there's a link to your own channel. I didn't realize that you were streaming yourself, so hey, I just chucked you a follow, so in the future, if you're streaming at the same time, you'll be able to raid into your channel, so hey, that's awesome. And also, where does that emoji come from? Is that from... Oh, Twitch Global emote. Okay. I thought it might have come from, like, I suppose she's changed her username now. She's now Celine Sparkle emoji, but hey, Now I know, exactly. Hey, so in future, expect a raid, alright? So yeah, how we all doing? I've had a little bit of a break, I have to admit, from streaming. Not just because I was being lazy, more just lack of motivation, okay? That's from Anna the Nugget. Oh, is it? It's an Attention Hey L Twitch Global emote. Or does global emote just mean that anyone from... I don't know. I don't like... Look, I'm a bit of a boomer when it comes to Twitch, okay? I know that that's a Konya emote, because I know that Konya has... We were just watching a video, like when Konya was talking about Pepe the Frog this morning. He's converted Pepe into a bird. Anyway, whatever. So, yeah, had a lot going on, but hey, I'm back to streaming, alright? I streamed this morning, did a stream for the Americans on American time. And I'm now back streaming evening, my time for the Australians, with a more Australian-centric stream, usually. Because the Americans are generally in bed by this time, we get all comers, not just Australians. So anyway, we have a fun stream that's scheduled for tonight with some Australian-centric stuff, but hey, with also some, other stuff from around the world, some global events. It feels good to be back, alright? I'm Aussie now, I'm still at Pacific time. What time is it? Pacific. 14 hours, so... Is that... No. 14 hours is Eastern time, so... Is that 1 AM? No, what's the time? 2 AM. Okay, that's not too late. Well, hey, alright. If you're willing to immigrate from the US, then hey, sure, we'd be happy to have you. Hey, look, I am an anarchist myself, so I don't care how a person identifies nationally. I think we should just do away with citizenship altogether. I've been talking with a couple of people, actually, online the last few days, just as happened to be a topic of conversation, and it seems to be that citizenship visas cause more trouble than they're worth. There's also the topic, I can't remember how I got into this recently, but somehow I got into this topic recently online, where, the whole thing about voting, about how non-citizens or people without specified residence status can't vote in a country, which, I mean, again, why do we have that? They live in the country, why does it give them a vote? Voting decision, like, the outcome of voting still affects them, so why the hell not? But hey, when are governments open and willing to, like, when do they not need to be prompted to reduce government power? And speaking of government power, let's get into tonight's first topic. So, continuing on with the journey of Australian YouTuber Friendly Geordies. Terrible screenshot here right now for Geordies, so sorry for that. So, just to bring everyone up to speed, if people don't know, Friendly Geordies is an Australian YouTuber. He's pretty darn successful. I think the first time I saw him, he was sitting around about 300 or 400 subs. He's just on 560. Now, earlier in the year, Jordan, well, actually, not earlier in the year, but like throughout his channel, he's a combination of poking fun at and exposing the corruption of the Deputy Premier of New South Wales. New South Wales, of course, being a state in Australia, and a Premier being like the governor in Australia. That's what we call our governors. We call them premiers. So, this man over here, actually, I'm going to zoom in, is John Baralaro, the Deputy Premier of New South Wales. And John isn't a big fan of Jordan because Jordan has been making some videos about his corruption. And he also doesn't like the fact that Jordan pokes fun at him for being Italian, which, I mean, fuck me. If we can't poke fun at the Italians, who can we poke fun at? So, he's suing Jordan. And a while back, which I'm sure is going to be addressed in this video, Jordan's producer, I think that's his position as an employee of Jordan, was arrested, not by the New South Wales police, but by the anti-terror police. So, let's learn who exactly sent them on Christo.
Over the past few months, Friendly Geordies has been under attack. I was hit with a defamation lawsuit by the Deputy Premier and I said, "She, mate." Partly because I was holding a sheet of paper with the defamation suit on it, but also because I'd just rewatched The Wire. A few weeks later, my only employee working on the lawsuit, Christo, was arrested by a police terror unit on his own corner, where he was then taken into custody, where I assume he said over and over, "Lawyer." He was let out on bail, and surprisingly, most of Australia was shocked that a police terror unit could be used as a toy for state politicians only famous for pork barrelling and their ability to eat barrels and barrels of pork. Eventually, John went on Sky News and was asked, "Did you have any involvement in getting the Fixated Persons Unit to arrest Christo?" The answer to that question just opens up more and more questions.
Did you ask for the Fixated Persons Investigation Unit to be involved in the arrest of Jordan Shanks's employee, Christo Lanka?
Absolutely not. Rubbish again. Rubbish. You know, they want to pitch it a particular way to get community support from their social community. They use whatever means to misrepresent the truth. And again, I'll leave that up to the police. They'll deal with all of this in due course.
Right, but just to clarify, so you had no role in that particular unit being
Tom,
involved.
I've already said, I've actually made it clear, Tom. I've said absolutely not. And again, for you to even be asking that question is an indictment on your level of journalism.
John being so offended by the question implies that he knows that it would have been a complete abuse of power and very arguably a corrupt act to call a terror unit on a critic. But if John knows this, why hasn't he come out and publicly condemned the use of the Fixated Persons Unit on Christo? I mean, now it seems like as good as any time, especially considering that the police version of ICAC, the Law Enforcement and Crime Commission, are probing the arrest. So if not for political pressure, why are the cops still working hard, desperately attempting to send Christo to prison when, let's be honest, this guy doesn't really scream working hard. He just screams, "I didn't stuff my face with donuts. I tripped over and fell on the donuts with my face." And the really pressing question is, if John didn't get the Fixated Persons Unit on Christo, who the f*** did? The only other person around was his driver. "Yeah, my fucking driver did it. Arrest him. Get the Fixated Persons Unit to punish him. He made me look bad." Thankfully, I have the answer to those questions, and they're very interesting answers. The only problem is they prove that Baralaro's behaviour is funnier than any joke I could ever make.
Motherfucking ad, alright? Jesus Christ. Look, I don't know, alright? Like, Italians are a nationality, alright? Not a race. And when it's corrupt politicians, I think it can be excused. Fucking alright, we back on?
You see, the thing is, I've got John's witness statement. And before you even think it's contempt of court for me to read it, don't worry. From my understanding, it's not relevant to any matter before the courts at the moment, as it's John's witness statement. Are you ready for this? In the matter of Jordan Shanks. I haven't been arrested. There isn't meant to be a matter for Jordan Shanks, so no sub judice concerns here, but it does open up another question. Why the hell is John giving witness statements not just against Christo, who's actually getting prosecuted, but against me? Maybe the answer lies in the statement. Let's read it. It starts with a bunch of boring shit like, my name is John, I'm 49 years old, I'm the Deputy Premier and my favourite colour is blue. I also like Hot Wheels cars. So we can skip that stuff. It gets funny when he starts whinging. On the 14th September 2020, Jordan Shanks posted a video on Friendly Jordy's YouTube channel titled Bros. My social media manager alerted me to the video. In this video, Jordan Shanks or one of his associates has rented out my guest house through Airbnb. Hey, incorrect, John, it was stays. Busted. False evidence, throw the book at him. In the video, Jordan Shanks makes some remarks including, I've f***ed in both your guest houses and my track record of what I've done in your houses is still nowhere near as dirty as what you've done to get them. John, get over the fact that I said that I f***ed in your house. I know for a fact that the Nationals have done far worse shit in my house. My guest house is listed on Airbnb and its address is public and has been subjected to media stories in the past. What has made me most uncomfortable is that it was booked by misleading my wife by not being wholly truthful to the nature of the booking. Misleading your wife, John? Is that the pot calling the kettle black? He's whining and later on claims that we didn't list my name on the COVID booking form, which for one is so disingenuous because it's imputing that John would have used the COVID form that was only there for a technicality to actually check who's booking his house. But secondly, you know how I know that to be true? Because my name was listed and my real phone number is there too. We have a copy. We didn't mislead anyone. We didn't have to, John. You're just lazy and stupid. That's it. You think that we're these fucking masterminds that stuck into your house and cooked up elaborate plans to stalk you? No, we booked your house through stays. We didn't even try to hide who was booking it. It was public record that Christo's been working for me for years. He's been in my video since 2016. Christo even asked if we could film in your house. If your wife said no, we wouldn't have filmed. What else could you expect from a guy that has so many skeletons in his closet he thinks being stalked is when people bump into him at Parliament House? Gladys! Matt Keane is stalking me, I saw him! Oh, that's not on, John. Where did you see him? Question time! He was even in the chambers! Oh, well, there's not much I can do about that, John. F*** you, Mum. I'm talking to Dad. I mean, David Elliott. Anyway, as you can imagine...
Are we getting a picture of John Baralaro yet? Like, this is not a smart man. Does this really seem like someone who would be dumb enough to call a terror police squad on a YouTuber's producer? It really seems like look, this Occam's razor. It really seems like it is just that simple.
The rest of the statement is essentially these crooked cops and John trying to figure out how to send a comedian to jail for jokes. He said that me and my dad debt trapped our club. I mean, I'm not gonna say it isn't true, but it was heaps mean. Can we behead him now? Not yet, John. You gotta be calculated about this stuff. Let's first beat up his employees' mum, girlfriend, and dog.
Like, we've watched that another time, but yeah, that did happen. That did happen in a video that Jordan's shared previously on his channel. Like, the terror police weren't there to, you know, shake everyone's hand. We saw Christo on the ground. And yeah, they assaulted his family. And their dog. Alright, come on. Whenever I watch a fucking Jordan video on stream, everything goes to shit, I swear to God. Motherfucker, page unresponsive, you little shit. Alright, we will wait. Hey, sorry about this, but I have a bit of a shit computer, and you can help fix that by contributing to the pizza fund. It would mean a whole lot. Yes, I know the page is unresponsive, alright? Anyway, so yeah, so okay, we can go through a little bit about the case against Jordan right now and what it means. So what we have here is a politician who is suing somebody for defamation for A, making fun of him, which like tabloids do that all the time. Every newspaper ever. Oh, it's working again. And also for what he said about the corruption as a political figure. Now, newspapers do this all the time. However, it's different. Jordan is an online figure. He's not with the Murdoch Media or Nine Media. He's online, independent, new media figure. So it's interesting that he's not afforded the same protections.
Let's first beat up his employees' mum, girlfriend and dog. On the 1 December 2020, Jordan Shanks posted a video on Friendly Jordy's YouTube channel titled, "I called John Baralaro, he answered. My social media manager alerted me to the video. When I was made aware of this video, it was only then I realized who it was calling me on 30 November. I'm not adding anything here. I'm reading it exactly how it was written and obviously exactly how it was said. Now, here's where it gets very, very interesting. Before I read the next bit of this statement, I'm just going to play a little of this Sky News clip.
Right, but just to clarify, so you had no role in that particular unit being
But Tom,
involved
I've already
in
said,
the...
I've actually made it clear, Tom. I've said absolutely not. And again, for you to even be asking that question is an indictment on your level of journalism, because you're just going off remarks by an individual who is, as you know, on social media, an abusive individual, that all he does is bullies people online, and that's what you're now supporting. So good luck to you, Tom.
I'm not supporting it, Deputy Premier. I'm just putting something to clarify from you.
No, but I answered the question. I answered the question, and then you put the question to me the second time. So I made myself.
Well, I was just saying in any.
Clear, Tom.
Yeah.
No, I made myself absolutely clear, Tom.
About 8:30 a.m. on Wednesday, 2 December 2020, I met with Detective Sergeant McQueen and Detective Senior Constable at my office where I reported the matter. My Chief of Staff, Siobhan Hamblin, organised 4 of the videos mentioned above to be copied onto a USB. John has had the fixated...
Well, this is the thing. Like, this is what Trump wanted to do. Trump wanted to change libel laws to stop people from criticising him. But he's doing it for real, because in Australia we don't have free speech laws as strong as America for some reason. We don't have free speech isn't specifically protected in our constitution for some reason.
Persons unit following me since December.
Whew.
I think Tom from Sky should be requesting an apology. An indictment on his journalism? Jesus Christ. Imagine being in the middle of a lawsuit that centres around someone claiming you're dishonest, to then go on TV and not only give an account about your actions that's the complete opposite of your police statement, but to indignantly splutter at the journalist for giving you a chance to explain your side of the story. I think Tom deserves an apology. He was trying to help you, John. He was giving you an escape rope, and you turned it into a noose. Imagine John on Andrew Denton, eh? And in case you're wondering what John did on the day of Christo's arrest, he instructed his Chief of Staff to call the Fixated Persons Unit, who they'd been working with for at least 6 months at that point. That's the real takeaway from this. John has had the Fixated Persons Unit on Friendly Jordy since December. This is before I had any interaction with John in person, and there's no denying that everyone, including the police and John, knew that this was wrong. As if John had a genuine reason for calling the Fixated Persons Unit, surely he'd have answered Tom's question with, "Of course I called the Fixated Persons Unit. These guys posted a real genuine threat to me and I was scared for my family." Just to reiterate to all the politicians who stayed silent about the arrest.
And there was a lot.
If John did nothing wrong in calling a terror unit on a comedian, why the is he denying doing it?
Absolutely not. Rubbish again. I've said absolutely not.
Oh, they snuck that one on me. Jesus Christ. People hate ads. Yep, we certainly do. Fucking hell. 3rd ad so far. I really hate YouTube. YouTube so fucking much. Alright. Well, at least it didn't crash this time. Do premiers really have this much power there? Apparently so. Apparently so. It's like, can you imagine, like, there's shit like it. This happens in not shit like this, but like stuff you hear about stories in like the UK and stuff, like Count Dankula being fined for the Nazi pug stuff. But here we have a YouTuber, a shitposter, who, like, despite his profession, investigated and exposed actual corruption from the Deputy Premier, alleged corruption. And in response, he's being sued by that politician. Like, it's a shut-up lawsuit. He doesn't care about what he's saying. He just wants him to shut up, because he knows that this isn't a big media company. This is just a regular average Joe, and that this will shut him up. Like, this doesn't happen. Like, I can't think of a time when this happens. Like, the closest we got to this in America is, like, Donald Trump trying to change the libel laws, so it'd be harder for the media to criticize him, or it'd be easier for him to retaliate when they criticized him. This doesn't happen in countries like America. And this is a step above just being hit with a fine for the Nazi pug stuff, or, like hateful language or whatever. Not like hate, what do they call it? Like, offensive language. This is a really dangerous precedent. And I'll talk about it more after the video, because I've talked about this at length, but like, it's still ongoing, and I still have a lot to say on the topic.
The f*** is he denying doing it?
Absolutely not. Rubbish again. I've said absolutely not.
Months and months of police resources chucked on a comedian. You'd think it couldn't get much more crooked than politically directed surveillance on a critic of the government with the predetermined goal of arresting said critic. But it does. In his statement, Detective Sergeant Matthew McQueen says that he read a copy of John's lawsuit threat written by Paul's villains, dated on the 18th of December 2020. The really interesting thing about this is, I've never seen a copy of John's lawsuit threat dated on the 18th of December 2020. My one's dated for the 22nd. In plainer terms, the Deputy Premier were using the New South Wales Police Force for their own private...
Wait, what was that? What was that?
Plainer terms, the Deputy Premier were using the New South Wales...
Okay, it sounded like he was going to say the Deputy Premier and maybe they had to cut out the name.
One's dated for the 22nd. In plainer terms, the Deputy Premier were using the New South Wales Police Force for their own private financial benefit. Figuring out ways for the New South Wales Police Force to intimidate me into emptying my pocket, despite me or my employees not only having never committed a crime, but being so innocent that the police...
These cuts are really weird. Like, I know that Jordan's lawyer has to go through all of his videos to make sure that he doesn't say anything that he's not supposed to, because obviously there's some stuff about the court proceedings that you can't reveal to the public. But, like, other videos that he's released on this have been really cleanly cut, so I don't know what happened to this one. This is a really sloppy one.
Even as crooked as they are, couldn't figure out how to lay trumped-up charges on us back then, so they waited. From my sources, it appears that the police kept a file on Friendly Geordies open for months. Each month, the cops would pull in more resources, attempting to figure out ways to pin us. There was no interest in the truth, no interest in the law. The outcome has always been predetermined at the Fixated Persons Unit. Get Friendly Geordies in any way you can, and help with John's back pocket. In doing so, you might get a promotion. There was no interest in justice, no interest in police work, no interest in protecting New South Wales. Just a politically and materially motivated intimidation job, perpetrated by greasy pole climbers at the behest of the Deputy Premier. Under the ICAC Act, corrupt conduct includes any conduct of any person, whether or not a public official, that adversely affects or that could adversely affect, either directly or indirectly, the honest or impartial exercise of official functions by any public official, any group or body of public officials, or any public authority, or any conduct of a public official that constitutes or involves the dishonest or partial exercise of any of his or her official functions, or any conduct of a public official or former public official that constitutes or involves a breach of public trust, or any conduct of a public official or former public official that involves the misuse of information or material that he or she has acquired in the course of his or her official functions, whether or not for his or her benefit or for the benefit of any other person. But for now, I feel it's my duty to protect others from these careerist cowboys in the New South Wales Police, so I'm going to name the cops involved in stalking us. Detective Sergeant Matthew McQueen, Detective Senior Constable Matthew Wise, Detective Senior Constable Elliot Merritt, and Detective Senior Constable whatever the their name is. If you ever see any of them in public, be extremely wary of them. And just pay extra special attention to this cop, Matthew McQueen. Him involving himself in John's lawsuit for John's own material gain, not to mention the assault he committed on Christo's family, should be enough to have McQueen sacked and prosecuted. So if he ever, and I mean ever, shows up to your house or tries to hold any form of authority over you in any way, really, really careful. Film it. Call your local police station and demand uniformed, real police step in and take over. He is completely unfit to be police, and no one in New South Wales should tolerate him still having a badge. Everyone involved in this arrest has prioritised their careers over public safety. Rest assured, there will be plenty more coverage on this matter, and there's a lot more fun stuff in John's statement too. Stuff that's just as shocking. It's just for another video. So to finish this one off, I'm going to paraphrase Paul Keating, because John, it was you that made the police statement and then said the exact opposite on Sky News, not me. It's you that's trying to sue me. I'm going to let you do yourself slowly.
I'm a big fan of Friendly Geordie's more serious content. He makes his content on his channel pretty recently. It's been obviously subject to this lawsuit, but it's maybe like 40, 60 political stuff, and the rest of it is like meme, variety show content, you know, like what it's like to have woke parents kind of stuff. So yeah, like he is like he's a comedian, but when he makes serious content, it is good. The police here in LA now collect your social media info if they stop you for any reason. So not even like if you're arrested, if they just stop you, they collect your social media information. They also use a software to analyze your posts and identify you across social platforms to prevent future disorder. Wow, dare I say, that's a little bit 1984? Jesus Christ. Do y'all remember, like I'm showing my age here, but do y'all remember when Apple used to be one of the most steadfast advocates for digital privacy? Like it's impossible to imagine in 2021, but back in the day, Apple used to be like they would keep the FBI out of people's phones. There was this case of a guy, I forget his name, but a guy that committed a terrorist attack, and they were trying to either get into either his phone or his girlfriend's phone, and Apple just said, nah, too bad, that's his privacy. They stood against the government, against the feds. But these days, Apple just, I mean, Apple's complicit in what Boy Meets Minnie is talking about, with the police, the government, the feds collecting your information online. Privacy kills profits, though. Yeah. Having you can't have principles as a company, you know. You can't have principles under capitalism. Oh well. Anyway, so Friendly Geordies. Great to see it. We love how John Baralaro is just digging himself into the hole further. Now, you may have heard about the situation of Friendly Geordies from some other people that have covered it. Plenty of Australians have covered it. I did a bit of a marathon a while back where I looked at a bunch of people's reactions to Christo's arrest. Australian YouTubers like Friendly Geordie, like Isaac Butterfield and Lewis Spears, two people that I don't agree with, but we can come together in defense of Friendly Geordies against clear government overreach. Count Dankula also did a video of it. Vosh talked about it. So it's great to see all of these YouTubers who are coming out in solidarity for Jordan. But here's the thing about free speech and freedom of the press in Australia. It's taken more than a bit of a dive in the last couple of years. Earlier in the year, I talked about the new media bargaining code. which was basically this restriction that the government was attempting to implement onto social media platforms, namely Facebook. Now, at the behest of old media companies like Rupert Murdoch, who, if you don't know, owns Fox News in America, and who owns over 2/3 of the media in Australia, just one guy, seems fair. So I thought competition was one of the pillars of free market capitalism, but I guess that's not real capitalism, am I right? So, spurred on by old media, Murdoch Media, the Australian government instituted a law which basically gave them free rein over what media company could be shared on a media company. Part of that was platforms like Facebook had to pay media companies so that the media companies could post on Facebook. So, in other words, currently, what Facebook has is, like any media company, like Channel 7, Channel 10, whatever, can make a page on Facebook and use it to, promote their content, share clips from their news, etc. They get the advantage of utilizing the platform of Facebook to reach viewers. And Facebook, of course, gets, money from advertising and whatnot. What the new media bargaining code stated was that Facebook had to pay them. Facebook had to pay the media companies to use its own platform. So they're already getting the advantage of utilizing Facebook's platform, but then they also get paid by Facebook to use its platform. Now, I'm not a big fan of Facebook. I'm not going to stand up here and say that Facebook is some great platform, because it's not. However, I am pro freedom of association and pro businesses being independent from government overreach. Sorry, excuse me. And this is absolutely the government extending its hand when it comes to how businesses can run. So, in response to this, Facebook surprisingly actually showed its principles and stated that, okay, if you're going to have a say in what we can and cannot put on our platform, then that's it. No news. So literally every news page on Facebook in Australia, gone. International news as well. Domestic news, local news, any kind of news profile whatsoever, gone. There's fuck it, alright? They called the Australian government's bluff and said, fine, if you want to have a say in how we run our business, then we just don't have that content on our platform. Now, funnily enough, the Australian government caved in the end and tore up the new media bargaining code. News is back on Facebook in Australia. However, this is just one example of how the Australian government is attempting to attack new media. An example of the Australian government's not outright attack on freedom of speech and freedom of the press, but attacking one aspect of that. The Australian government is filled with dinosaurs who don't understand how the way we share information changed after Web 2.0. They don't understand how information is shared and consumed online. They're still very much in the world of sit down at the kitchen table in the morning and read the paper. Because Murdoch has such a huge hand in the Australian Parliament. And it's these same people who are not speaking up in defense of friendly Geordies. Because here we have somebody who falls into that new media industry, somebody who is involved in sharing information online, utilizing the platforms, the social media platforms of Web 2.0, and they're doing the exact same thing that media companies have been doing forever. Like, Jordan hasn't even harassed politicians or anything. Like, he's made fun of them. But how many videos are there out there of, reporters running up to politicians, trying to ask them questions? A Current Affair, which is a, tabloid news program in Australia that, runs up on welfare recipients, trying to chase up, welfare kings and queens. Or, newspapers that post caricatures. Or newspapers that post corruption about politicians. Why is it different when it's Friendly Geordies? Well, because he's not part of the old crowd. He's not part of Murdoch media. New media fears people like Jordan because they can see the writing on the wall, they can read between the lines, and they can see that the way the information is shared is going to be online in the future. It's going to be consumed on platforms like Facebook, like Google, like YouTube. I was about to say Yahoo, but not Yahoo. And they know that they can get away with slapping a lawsuit on somebody like Jordan. And not only slapping a lawsuit on him, but there's no one in the Australian Parliament, very few people in the Australian Parliament speak up out about it. And no one's talking about it for what it is, just like they went with the New Media Bargaining Code. No one's talking about how it's an attack on free speech and freedom of the press. Because Friendly Geordies is a private citizen who utilises the platform of Google and YouTube to basically act as not only an independent journalist, but to utilise his freedom of speech. Now, obviously, websites have TOS, but Friendly Geordies is operating within those TOS. However, it's not the website TOS he's breaking. He's been attacked. His freedom of speech is being attacked, which is outside of terms of service and is actual law. Regardless of whether or not there's any weight to the law case against Friendly Geordies, it's a very, very dangerous precedent to be attacking independent, new media, online public figures for doing the exact same thing that old media does every day. No one is talking about it, and it's very frustrating. It's funny, I see people like Sydney Watson, who's an Australian-American, pretty far-right conservative. She's getting real close to some white nationalist views. I did a special on her on stream a while back, and we covered some racist shit she said, and she's getting real fucking close to race realism. Anyway, she's tweeting all the time about, mask mandates and vaccine shit and lockdown rules in Australia. I haven't seen her once mention this attack on freedom of speech. Curious. Doesn't Lauren Southern live in Australia now? Do not remind me. Lauren Southern, here's the thing, Australia treats immigrants worse than America, if you can believe it. Australia built, with taxpayer dollars, offshore detention centres in islands off the coast of Australia, which I actually used to work for the company that runs those offshore detention centres. I didn't work in that department, but I worked for the same company that manages them, so you can imagine what kind of company that is to work for. So we detain thousands of refugees, thousands of families, children in these offshore detention centres in perpetuity, while we either wait to send them back to their country or offload them to another country like Indonesia or New Guinea. Yeah, we treat people just trying to find a better life for themselves and their families that way. However, we allow Nazi conspirators who inspired the Christchurch shooter to immigrate and settle in our country. What the fuck? Did nobody Google Lauren Southern when her name came up? What the fuck? It's fucking disgusting. It disgusts me no end that is the approach the Australian government has to immigration. Already, the fact that we abuse people's human rights by keeping in these detention centres in perpetuity in conditions worse than prison. We treat Australian prisoners better than how we treat these people in these detention centres. However, we let that Nazi cunt move to this country to live here with her family in Sydney. I don't know her address. I'm sorry. If I did, though. If I did. Also, not this requirement for immigration, but you guys have so much space. Our country is geographically, like, it's almost the same size as America. It's not off by that much, but we have less than a tenth of the population of America. And guess what? I don't know if this is like just an Australian thing. I don't know if you see the same thing in America, but this is indicative of the anti-immigration mindset of your average Australian reactionary. A semi-common bumper sticker that you'll see in Australia is "Fuck off, we're full." You know how many people live in Australia? 24 million. In a country roughly the same size as America, which houses 330 million people. We have so much space. True Gaming. Thanks for stopping by. That's a hard name to pronounce. Gaminger. I really hope that's not trying to make me say a certain word. Just saying. So yeah, absolutely, Boy Meets Mini. We have plenty of space for refugees. I talked, like, back when all the shit was going down with the airports at Afghanistan, I was talking about how, like, we should have just had, like, obviously, like, the I'm not going to get into the subject of, like, pulling out of Afghanistan, but, like, the pullout itself, we should have had plane after plane after plane after plane, and should have just loaded up literally, like, the population of Kabul out of the country, and as many people from the surrounding areas we could. Like, literally just keep on loading up people until you've either ran out of people, or the Taliban have, like, got to the point where it prevented planes from taking off. Seriously. We have so much fucking room in this country. I think Australia ended up taking, like, it was some, like, pitiful number, like 3,000 refugees, something like that. And Kabul, the city, has a population in the millions. It's fucking disgusting. Our country, the way not only we treat, but our attitude towards immigration is fucking disgusting. California's 40 million people, most of it is still nature. True. I mean, it does have some pretty, like, big cities in California. But still, like, California alone has more people. Not only more people, but a bigger economy than Australia. It's fucking ridiculous. Like, isn't there, like, some thing where, like, you could fit the entire world's population in Texas? Isn't that a thing? Like, obviously, it wouldn't be comfortable, but isn't there, like, a thing where, like, you could theoretically fit 7 billion people within Texas? Fuck off, we're full. So fucking ridiculous. Oh my god. But hey, that's what happens when you elect the Conservative Party for the last 9 years. Are we getting... Actually, I think we're getting on 12. What? It's 2021 now. No, they were elected in 2013. Okay, yeah. Okay, 9 years. Oh. So yeah, Australia. In some, it's not as far right as America in some respects, but in others, oh, look. At least we don't have anyone actually going to jail for burning the flag. But man, how many YouTubers are being slapped with lawsuits? Like, think how many videos there is criticizing Trump and making fun of Trump and talking about Trump's corruption. Like, there's thousands, probably millions of videos out there of people from across the aisle poking fun at President Trump. Imagine if all of them were slapped with a lawsuit. It's ridiculous. Anyway, so I think we need a little bit of a palate cleanser after that. So, I do hope that all of you have heard, at least heard, of Judith Butler. If you haven't, well, you're in for a treat. Judith Butler is what is she? Is she a sociologist, or I don't know exactly what I'd call her, but she's an expert on gender studies, at least. She is like every time she comes out with a take on gender, she's still got it. That's why the title of this stream, at least part of it, is, what is it? Has it worded? Butler slaps, because Judith Butler came out with an article, and my goodness, did she slap once more. Exactly. Poggers for Judith Butler. Now, here's the thing, though. The article that we're going to read was originally... Rainbow Wheel of Death. That's not good. The article that Imagine thinking that gender studies majors are a threat to civilization. That is one fragile civilization, my friend. The article that we're going to read was originally published within The Guardian. However, shortly after it was published, they took it down and put forth a edited version. Because Judith Butler, well, she came for the TERFs and compared TERFs correctly so to fascists. The gender critical movement, which we've talked about on stream before, has a lot of overlapping ideologies with fascism. So this isn't The Guardian, this is a website where we can read the original unedited version of the article. And as soon as this works, we shall do just that. Until then... Anyway, so we'll give it a minute. So yeah, everything that I've read on Judith Butler in the past, I've loved it because I am a sociology major, so every time gender comes up in class, her name is mentioned. If you read any kind of sociology, anthropology, gender, sex, diversity textbook, she'll be cited frequently. Yeah, she's an absolute G when it comes to gender. Oh dear. Come on, mate. Is it just Chrome overall that's stopped working? Yes, it has. Okay, well. Alright, 2 seconds. Oh, nope, okay. You will rethink the category of women. Okay. That's okay. I don't need a computer. I have a cellular phone. See, this is what you have to deal with when you're a streamer on a budget. I worked all through last year and actually made pretty good money working for the... Oh, of course it's not working. Working for the company that I did. However, unfortunately, myself and 400 other employees were made redundant in November. After risking our lives and the lives of our families to go out and work for that company. So, yeah, unfortunately, all my savings went to things like rent, bills, stuff like that. So, the fancy, brand new, custom-built PC that I had planned to use for streaming, to use for editing, and to use for gaming, unfortunately, well, I just took that dream and put it in a jar on a shelf. Oh well. So, this is still not working. However, you'll just have to... There's no pictures or anything, so we're just here to listen. So, from Ill Will. We need to rethink the category of woman. Interview with Judith Butler. Judith Butler and Jules Gleason. Shortly after its this is a editorial from Ill Will. Shortly after its publication, The Guardian decided to redact Jules Gleeson's September 7th interview with Judith Butler, omitting sections directed at the anti-fascist implications of the philosopher's work. Below is the original unabridged version. So, thank you to Ill Will for publishing this. Shame on The Guardian for cowardly caving to turf criticism. So, let's go. This is the interview. It's been 31 years since the release of Gender Trouble. What were you aiming to achieve with the book? It was meant to be a critique of heterosexual assumptions within feminism, but it turned out to be more about gender categories. For instance, what it means to be a woman does not remain the same from decade to decade. The category of woman can and does change, and we need it to be that way. Politically, securing greater freedoms for women requires that we rethink the category of woman to include those new possibilities. The historical meaning of gender can change as its norms are reenacted, refused, or recreated. Should we not be surprised or opposed when the category of woman expands to include trans women? And since we are also in the business of imagining alternate futures of masculinity, we should be prepared and even joyous to see what trans men are doing with the category of men. Oh! It's so nice to hear somebody from an older generation just get everything right when it comes to gender. Far out. Based Judith Butler. She's so good. Let's talk about Gender Trouble's central idea of performativity. This remains a controversial view of how gender works. So, what did you have in mind? At the time, I was interested in a set of debates in the Academy about speech acts. Performative speech acts are the kind that make something happen or seek to create a new reality. When a judge declares a sentence, for instance, they produce a new reality, and they usually have the authority to make that happen. But do we say that the judge is all-powerful? Or is the judge citing a set of conventions, following a set of procedures? If it is the latter, then the judge is invoking a power that does not belong to them as a person, but as a designated authority. Their act becomes a citation, they repeat an established protocol. How does that relate to gender? I suggested more than 30 years ago that people are, consciously or not, citing conventions of gender when they claim to be expressing their own interior reality, or even when they say they are creating themselves anew. It seemed to me that none of us totally escape cultural norms. At the same time, none of us are totally determined by cultural norms. Gender then becomes a negotiation, a struggle, a way of dealing with historical constraints and making new realities. When we are girlied, we are entering into a realm of girldom that has been built up over a long time. A series of conventions, sometimes conflicting, that establish girlness within society. We don't just choose it, and it's not just imposed on us, but that social reality can and does change. Interesting. Today's queers often talk about gender being assigned at birth, but your meaning here seems pretty different. Gender is an assignment that does not happen once. It is not ongoing. We are assigned a sex at birth, and then a slew of expectations follow which continue to assign gender to us. The powers that do that are part of an apparatus of gender that assigns and reassigns norms to bodies, organises them socially, but also animates them in directions contrary to those norms. Perhaps we should think of gender as something that is imposed at birth through sex assignment and all the cultural assumptions that usually go along with that. Yet gender is also what is made along the way. We can take over the power of assignment, make it into self-assignment, which can include sex reassignment at a legal and medical level. Arguments around identity have become central to much of our politics these days. As someone who is skeptical of stable identity categories, what do you make of that? I think it matters a great deal how we understand that centrality. My own political view is that identity ought not to be the foundation for politics. Alliance, coalition, and solidarity are the key terms for an expanding left, and we need to know what we are fighting against and for to keep that focus. My goodness, Judith Butler out here advocating for leftist unity. Come on. Are you really going to let her down? It is imperative that we work across differences and that we build complex accounts of social power. Accounts that help us build links among the poor, the precarious, the dispossessed, LGBTQI+ peoples, workers, and all those subject to racism and colonial subjugation. Oh my god! Oh, it's so frustrating that so many dumb fuck lefties online, and here we have Judith Butler advocating for solidarity and intersectionality. Oh. These are not always separate groups or identities, but overlapping and interconnected forms of subjugation that oppose racism, misogyny, homophobia, transphobia, but also capitalism and its destructions, including the destruction of the earth and the indigenous way of life. Oh my god. Look, I have a dream, alright? I have a dream that it's not a pipe dream. Leftist unity can be achieved. Absolutely, what a real comrade. What an absolute Chad. The virgin turf and the Chad Judith Butler. Theorists such as Assad Haider have adopted your theory to address racial divides in the United States. Haider emphasizes your view of identity formation as restless and always uprooted. But don't the right wing usually score victories by pushing a much more fixed vision of identity? The right is seeking desperately to reclaim forms of identity that have been rightly challenged. At the same time, they tend to reduce movements for racial justice as identity politics, or to caricature movements for sexual freedom or against sexual violence as concerned only with identity. In fact, these movements are primarily concerned with redefining what justice, equality, and freedom can and should mean. In this way, they are essential to any radical democratic movement, and we should reject those caricatures. So what does that mean for the left? If we base our viewpoints only on particular identities, I'm not sure we can grasp the complexity of our social and economic worlds, or build the kind of analysis or alliance we need to realize ideals of radical justice, equality, and freedom. At the same time, marking identity is a way to make clear how coalitions must change to be more responsive to interlinked oppressions. What a G. Today, we often hear about the importance of listening to those with a lived experience of political oppression. Political philosopher Olufemi Taiwo has warned that noble intentions to decenter privileged perspectives can easily backfire. Yes, it is important to acknowledge that while a white person cannot claim to represent black experience, there is no reason for white people to be paralyzed on matters on race, refusing to intervene at all. No one needs to represent all black experience in order to track, expose, and oppose systemic racism, and to call upon others to do the same. If white people become exclusively preoccupied with our own privilege, we risk becoming self-absorbed. We definitely don't need more white people making everything about themselves. That just re-centralizes whiteness and refuses to do the work of anti-racism. Far out. Look at that. Judith Butler coming out hot against liberal idpol. Far out. Actual leftist. Fantastic. How has your own gender identity informed your political theory? My sense is that my gender identity, whatever that is, was delivered to me first by my family, as well as a variety of school and medical authorities. It was with some difficulty that I found a way to occupy the language used to define and defeat me. I still rather think that pronouns come to me from others, which I find interesting, since I receive an array of them, so I am always somewhat surprised and impressed when people decide their own pronouns, or even when they ask me what pronouns I prefer. I don't have an easy answer, though I am enjoying the world of the they. When I wrote Gender Trouble, there was no category for non-binary, but now I don't see how I cannot be in that category. Oh, NB Judith Butler, maybe. Oh, here we go. You have often been the target of protesters across the world. In 2014, anti-gay marriage protesters in France marched on the streets denouncing Theorie du genre, gender theory. In 2017, you were burnt in effigy by evangelical Christian protesters in Brazil, chanting, "Take your ideology to hell." What do you make of that? Okay, look, I support the evangelicals' right to burn an effigy of Judith Butler, but it's pretty cringe. The anti-gender ideology movement, a global movement, insists that sex is biological and real, or that sex is divinely ordained, and that gender is a destructive friction, taking down both man and civilization and God. Anti-gender politics have been bolstered by the Vatican and the more conservative evangelical and apostolic churches on several continents, but also by neoliberals in France and elsewhere who need the normative family to absorb the decimation of social welfare. This movement is at once anti-feminist, homophobic, and transphobic, opposing both reproductive freedom and trans rights. It seeks to center gender studies programs to take gender out of public education. It seeks to censor gender studies programs to take gender out of public education, a topic so important for young people to discuss, and to reverse major legal and legislative successes for sexual freedom, gender equality, and laws against gender discrimination and sexual violence. Yup, I just saw a thing on Twitter earlier, an hour ago, talking about how the it might have been the LGB Alliance, but some UK-based anti-trans organization, they were complaining about how they had to utilize what is it, the Heritage Foundation? That's the US one. I think it's the Heritage Foundation, talking about how they had to utilize the Heritage Foundation as the only anti-trans organization that had helped them, despite the fact that the Heritage Foundation is fundamentally anti-feminist and anti-women's rights. Oh, here we go. It seems that some within feminist movements are becoming sympathetic to these far-right campaigns. This year's furor around We Spa in Los Angeles saw an online outrage by transphobes, followed by bloody protests organised by the Proud Boys, who are still not designated as a terrorist group, by the way. Can we expect this alliance to continue? It is very appalling and sometimes quite frightening to see how trans-exclusionary feminists have allied with right-wing attacks on gender. The anti-gender ideology movement is not opposing a specific amount of gender, but seeking to eradicate gender as a concept or discourse, a field of study, an approach to social power. Sometimes they claim that sex alone has scientific understanding, but other times they appeal to divine mandates for masculine domination and difference. They don't seem to mind contradicting themselves. The TERFs, trans-exclusionary radical feminists, and the so-called gender-critical writers have also rejected the importance in feminist philosophy of science showing how culture and nature interact, such as Karen Bard, Donna Haraway, E.M. Hammonds, and Anne Fausto Sterling, in favour of a regressive and spurious form of biological essentialism. So they will not be part of the coalition that seeks to fight the anti-gender movement. The anti-gender ideology is one of the dominant strains of fascism in our times, so the TERFs will not be part of the contemporary struggle against fascism, one that requires a coalition guided by struggles against racism, nationalism, xenophobia, and carceral violence. One that is mindful of the high rates of femicide throughout the world, which includes high rates of attacks on trans and genderqueer people. The anti-gender movement circulates a spectre of gender as a force of destruction, but they never actually read any works in gender studies. Quick and fearful conclusions take the place of considered judgments. Yes, some work on gender is difficult, and not everyone can read it, so we have to do better in reaching a broader public. As important as it is, however, to make complex concepts available to a popular audience, it is equally important to encourage intellectual inquiry as part of public life. Unfortunately, we are living in anti-intellectual times, and neo-fascism is becoming more normalized. Far out, Butler coming out hot, calling TERFs for what they are: fascists. Best counter-argument for evangelicals and TERFs: Jesus wants you to have the same freedom of gender expression too, but they don't want that freedom. That's the thing. It's against God. Or you're trying to erase women. I follow some of the more the trans resistance to the gender critical movement on Twitter. People like Katie Montgomery, who's really smart. You should go follow her. And the shit that she says about what people have said to her and what people respond to her on Twitter with, all this stuff about gender critical, it is so absolutely brain dead. And the thing is, you can't argue with TERFs. I think it was last year. I don't know if it was this year, but I spent hours arguing with these two TERFs on Twitter. You're up early? No, I am. It's not that late. It's only 8 p.m. for me, my friend. Yeah, like I stream morning my time to get into the Americans and evening my time for the Australians. Anyway, arguing with these TERFs, citing multiple studies, the stuff they would come back at me with, like, was all of this, like, TERF data, and, like, I would refute it. Like, there was this one article about, I can barely remember now, it was so long ago, about trans women in women's prisons. And no, I can't even remember, I'm sorry. But anyway, like, they're not open to reason. Like, Judith Butler is correct when she calls them anti-intellectual. Anyway, we have a little bit left in the article. Let's finish it off. You've always stressed that your gender theory is not only informed by scholarly debate, but also your own years participating in lesbian and gay communities. Since the early 1990s, you become a uniquely influential thinker within these circles. How much has changed since you came out? Oh, I never came out. I was outed by my parents at the age of 14, so I've been identified variously as butch, queer, trans, asterisk, for over 50 years. I was certainly affected by the gay and lesbian bars I frequented too often in the late 1970s and early 1980s, and I was concerned then as well with the changes faced by bisexuals to gain acceptance. I met with intersex groups to understand their struggle with the medical establishment, and eventually came to think more carefully about the difference between drag, transgender, and gender in general. I've always been involved in non-academic activist groups, and that is an ongoing part of my life. We don't deserve Judith Butler. What kind of issues were being addressed by radical gay and lesbian politics before the word queer emerged? The demonstrations in my youth were certainly about the right to come out, the struggle against discrimination, and pathologization and violence, both domestic and public. We fought against psychiatric pathologization and its carceral consequences, but also we fought for a collective right to live one's body in public, without fear of violence, the right to grieve openly over lives and loves that were lost, and this struggle took a very dramatic shape once HIV arrived and ACT UP emerged. Queer was, for me, never an identity, but a way of affiliating with the fight against homophobia. It began as a movement opposed to the policing of identity, opposing the police, in fact. These protests focused on rights to healthcare, education, public freedoms, opposing discrimination and violence. We wanted to live in a world where one could breathe and move and love more easily, but we also imagined and created new forms of kinship, community, and solidarity, however fractious they intended to be. I went to Dyke demonstrations, but also worked on international human rights, understanding what those limits were. And I came to understand that broader coalitions, equally opposed to racism, economic justice, and colonialism, were essential for any queer politics. We see how this works now in queer Marxism groups, Queers for Economic and Racial Justice, Queers Against Apartheid, Al-Qays, the Palestinian group against both occupation and homophobia. How does political life today compare? Today I appreciate especially queer and feminist movements that are dedicated to healthcare and education as public goods, that are anti-capitalist, committed to the struggle for racial justice, disability rights, Palestinian political freedoms, and which oppose the destruction of the earth and indigenous life worlds, as evident in the work of Jasbir Puar, Sarah Ahmed, Sylvia Federici, Angela Davis, and the work of Niuna Menos and abolition feminism. There is now a broader version, even though this is a time of great despair, as we see global economic inequalities intensify under the pandemic. Whew. Did you know that your video is on sync or not enough frames per second? Yes, I am aware of that. I'm afraid my computer is having an absolute fit tonight. Sorry, can't do anything about that. But I mean, we're just listening to me read, so the picture's not so important. In fact... There we are. Oops, no, that's not it. There we go. That'll improve the quality. So I'm still here, but we're just listening, okay? But I think we'll have to call it quits after this. I had more to cover, but like this fucking computer, man. Many gender theorists have written on your work's direct impact on them, from Julia Serrano's sheepish recounting of your attending a poetry reading that included the line, "Fuck Judith Butler," to Geordie Rosenberg's immersive reflection, "Gender Trouble" on Mother's Day. What has becoming an intellectual celebrity felt like for you personally? I have found a way to live to the side of my name. That has proven to be very helpful. I know that many queer and trans folks feel strongly about their names, and I respect that. But my survival depends on my ability to live at a distance from my name. Once again, Judith Butler coming out hot with a take on gender, feminism, and intersectionality overall. My goodness. Fantastic woman. Everything she had to say was really insightful, really spot on, especially when it comes to TERFs. Fuck TERFs. TERFs are not feminists. And they're even at the point now where they're allying with fascist groups. Well, like I said, my friends, I'm sorry about the quality. Shit to your computer. Hey, I'm sorry. Look, I wish I could do something about it, but after November, I had to spend all my savings on rent and stuff. So, yeah. Anyway, thank you all for coming, alright? It's been a blast. Please make sure you go out and join your union. I'll see you all very soon. Have a good one.